right. Hey guys, Sam Alcoholic. So thank you, Mary, for asking me to speak and everybody for having me here. My sobriety day is August 7th of 2017. And I do have a home group. That's something that's very important to me. If it wasn't for AA and the group and being of service and like just all three sides of a triangle, I really don't think that I would be here today. And I'll get into that too. But yeah, man, like August 7th of 2017, which still blows my mind today. So I live in Austin, Texas. We are having the international conference here after bidding for it for 5 years. And my home group is Straight Pepper Diet. So we meet on Mondays at 8 p.m. If you guys are in town, like ever come by, like come say hi, man. Like I will be at the door ready to shake your hand. And if you're new, I'm gonna know. So I'm gonna say hi to you no matter what. That's for sure. It's what my sponsors taught me. It's what made people like Mary hate me because she is hates people and I love people. So um there's some I was trying to think of okay, so when that being asked to speak for like share my story and so on, usually we go through the whole spiel. It takes about an hour, but I know I only have 15 minutes here, so I don't think I'm going to be able to get too deep into it. But what I think is most important, especially like coming in or for those that are new, is touching on step one and like being able to understand what that really means. And that's because without step one, until I know what that even means in the first place, then personally for me, it just didn't make any sense to go move forward with the rest of the steps, you know? So there was one part, long story short, I got sober when I was 20. So I had a little bit of background, I have a kid. He's 10 years old. I'm 27. So if you do the math, there was like 3 to 4 years where like I just could not stay sober no matter what. It's crazy. Like the first night he was born, I was withdrawing so bad that all I could think about was getting that next fix. And I left the hospital to get a drink and get a fix. That was the depth of my addiction. And what's crazy is that like in my head, what went through my mind was that I needed to do this so that I can show up and be a good dad because I don't want to be sick around my kid. And that made sense to me, because I was in so much pain from not being able to drink that I needed to do this to fix myself and get myself together so that I can show up for his mom and his grandparents and for him. And that just made sense to me, man. Like I'm sick. I'm sick and I need to feel better. So that's what I did. Um, when I came in, it was the last house on the block type of deal. There was no more treatment centers, there was no more detoxes. I didn't have a chance anymore. There was no money. I was homeless. And I ended up getting sober in South Haven, Mississippi, which is right next to Memphis. So it's like a tri-city area where it's like Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi, and everything was like 15-minute drive within each other. So basically, like when people ask me where I got sober, I tell them Memphis because that's where most of the meeting I went to. But they, I walked in. I walked in into AA. And what you guys did for me that day was you let this 20-year-old kid walk in with a bag of clothes that had no idea what's to come next. Um, because I was so broken. Like it hurt so fucking bad, dude. So bad. And I just sat down and I listened. I didn't know what to say. People were asking me if I was okay. And I just sat there muted, not being able to say much, I it was it felt pointless. I felt so hopeless, like what are you guys gonna offer me, man? I've been to rehab, I've been to detox. What are you guys gonna offer me? So my sponsor, he wasn't my sponsor yet, but I asked him if we can meet up, and he asked me what I was doing the next day, and he said, "Okay, be here tomorrow." I think it was like 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I came back to the meeting. It was like a trailer. Like it was literally like a double wide. That's where we met in Mississippi, like bumfuck nowhere. So I go to the meeting the next day. I meet with my sponsor, and we immediately start reading. He asked me if I think I'm powerless over alcohol and if I think that my life is unmanageable. We're like on page 12 of the big book in Bill's story, and I say yes. He asked me if I believe that something else could restore me to sanity, and um, and if this is like something that I want to do now, if I want to do I want to stay sober? Am I willing to do what it takes? And I made a joke because I was like, I'm a smart ass. And I was just like, I don't know, man. Depends on what it takes me. And like, trying to just play it off because it got too deep. It got way too serious. And I was like, I can't handle the seriousness and depth of like what you're asking me right now. So and then he was like, well, Sam, man, if I was to tell you to go run around naked, would you do it if that kept you sober? And I was like, oh yeah, 100%. And he was like, then all right, you're willing to do whatever it takes. And we sat there, we're reading. And I want to read this part because this is where I had one of the biggest first step experience that I think solidified my reasoning as to what kept me here. And it's on page 8 in Bill's story. And what he says is, now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife that had been much happiness after all. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. And how much time do I have left, Maria?
Like 10 minutes.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. So we sat across from each other and read this part in the big book. And I start crying, man. Like I couldn't help myself. I just started crying, especially whenever that alcohol was my master part. Because one of my last day of using, not having parents in my life, my kid's mom, her like they took me in, and they basically like the role models that I never had as to what it was like to be like a man or to take care of a wife or whatever it was. And her dad like took in this like broken kid, and I broke his heart, man. I broke his heart by the way I treated his daughter. And it sucked. He's like this mixed martial art guy, got like a black belt in Krav Maga. And on one of my last days of using, he busted in my door and just like started like wailing on me. Like, it's like, you motherfucker, you're trained. Like, let me defend myself at least. But no, he like put me on the ground, started stomping on me and elbowing me in the face, broke my nose, broke my ribs. And while I was on the ground, he's just like, he's crying and it's like, I can't believe you would do this. Like alcohol, you're a slave to this. You're a slave. And he just kept yelling that at me, like, you're just such a slave to this thing. And for some reason, like that part in Bill's story where he talks about how it took him back in time to the old Winchester Cathedral when reading that tombstone. That's what it was like for me reading that part in the big book. It took me back to that moment when I was reading with my sponsor, where like the one person, like one of the very, very few people in my life who tried to help me out, I once again broke their trust and caused so much pain that they couldn't help themselves but to react because that's what we do, we react. Um, and yeah, man, like, God, I caused his daughter so much pain. He had every right to do that. And what's stupid is that night I left again, and instead of like trying to make things right, I got drunk. It's like, what would make me feel better? I'm gonna drink. That's gonna make me feel better. And that made so much sense because at the second I drank, it's like, it's all good. I'm gonna talk to them tomorrow. I'm gonna figure it out. I came back, door locked. It's like, fuck. Okay. And that's like a reoccurring theme that happened for me, man. And yeah, with my sponsor sitting there with me and just celebrating this thing and reading with me, having that step one experience that I had, I knew at that very moment that there was nothing left for me but to try this thing out. And little did I know that that was going to be my sobriety date still to this day by walking into that room of AA. You guys have saved my life, man. Um, I know a lot of time when people speak, there's so much like that happens before sobriety and then like at the end of sobriety that the whole middle gets kind of left out because like what was it? How long has it been? 6 years? 6 years? Yeah. Um, that's a long time, dude. That's a long time. I hate when people say, yeah, I just got a year. I just got 90 days. I only have 18 months. Like, no, dude, that's a long time. There was a point in my life where I could never pick up anything more than a 90-day chip. That's the most important chip that I ever picked up for me was my 90-day chip because I could never get there, you know? So 4 months, 151 days, 1.1 year, whatever it is, like a miracle is happening and it's God is working in our lives. Because you see, what happens is if we compare like where we're at now and from the first day we came in, the day that we have today is always going to win out against that very first day, no matter what. So, like, that needs to end, man. Like, how can I improve on a day-to-day basis? What does my relationship with God looks like? How can I do so? And over time, like, there's a lot of pain that happens in sobriety. There was a point in sobriety where I slept on my sponsor's couch for 2 weeks. That was at 2.5 years. This year, I had to do it again for an entire month because emotions suck and breakups suck, and it happens. Like life goes on, man. But it's a testament, it's the acid test they talk about in step 10. You know, how am I going to act today whenever life gets hard? Because it's easy to stay sober when shit's easy, man, when you're in it. But when life hits you, when the hammer of God hits you, how are we then to proceed? And I've seen a lot of people go out because they were spiritually unfit. Life finally caught up to them and hit them because shit happens, and there's no reason. There doesn't have to be a reason behind it. Things just happen, and they weren't able to come back into the room because they got complacent where they were at. So, uh, this is all to say that like being in the middle of it, stay involved, making sure you have a home group. If you don't have a home group, get one. If you don't have a sponsor, I don't know what you're doing. You need to get a sponsor. That's just playing with fire. And if you don't want one, then it's time to take a look as to why you're here. For me, there was nothing left at all. So I wanted to read one last thing because I haven't thought about my friend in a long time who passed away this year, and this was his favorite passage. Some of you might actually know him. Bill lives in San Antonio, or used to, but he passed away in January, and his favorite passage was on page 100. We were close. I love Bill very much. He had autism, but he showed up for AA in ways that like you could kind of see it in the way he smiles. And he's an alcoholic, man, like DUI after DUI, just kind of crazy what his story is. Like I don't even, he shouldn't even be able to drive, drunk or not, to be honest. Um, but I love Bill. He would always tie these words, and I remember eating with him one time when I first met him in Texas 2018, actually in Austin, before I had moved here. We went out to eat, and he had a temper tantrum. And what you do with Bill in that scenario is you kind of just like get stern with him and tell him like, hey, this is not how we act, Bill. And he'll listen because he's smart enough. He puts two and two together. And then he'll apologize. And it's so sweet because like he can't help himself. So what he does with these words and the alphabet is that he'll say like a word for every single letter describing certain things. So he did that with the entire ABCs all the way down to Z, like amazing, beautiful, caring. I forgot what the D was, but you get what I'm saying. He went all the way down and he was like, "That's you, Sam." And while he was doing that, he was like, he was tearing up because of how kind I was able to be for him that day. Because, you know, he was hard to be around, to be quite frank. Um, and when I was at the hospital, I asked him, it's like, "Hey, Bill, um, what is what is your favorite passage from the big book? You know, I would like to know." And he told me it was on page 100. So I'm going to read this, and it says, "We have seen men get well before, well, whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of those of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances." And I don't think there's anything else that like define what Bill's message is to the world, especially in AA. All this guy wanted to do was listen to God's word and eat food with his friends. That's it. And when he did that, you knew that it made him happier than anything ever. And you guys do that for me. When I had a year sober, no one in my family came except for you guys. I'm fucking tearing up. I fucking hate crying, dude. um, Not one person from my family came and they live in that city, but you guys did because you understood how hard it was and how deep this thing is and the amount of people that died from it. And you were able to help me celebrate a year, something that I didn't even think was possible for me, for a drunk like me. Now I'm an awesome dad, dude. I have my kid back in my life. I get to show up for funerals, for weddings. Shit, I never thought I could do. And this is coming from the drunk that couldn't even stay the whole night at the hospital while his wife was having a first kid, you know, who knew? I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, Mary, for asking me to do this. And thank you guys for having